West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
And good evening from New York. I'm Ali Velshi in for Chris Hayes. We're watching the continuing fallout from the aggressive anti-democratic power play by Republicans in the Tennessee State House. Now, tomorrow, a local board of commissioners in Memphis, which is in Shelby County, is expected to vote on whether to reinstate Justin Pearson, who's one of two black Democratic lawmakers expelled by Republicans over decorum violations stemming from a gun reform protest that they held at the state capitol after a mass school shooting in Tennessee. As we covered on this show, the other expelled lawmaker, Justin Jones, made his triumphant return to the state house yesterday after a local council in Nashville, county he's from, voted unanimously to return him to fill the vacancy left by his own expulsion. Now, this particular ploy by the legislature was so egregious, a Republican supermajority wielding its power to remove two democratically elected lawmakers on trivial charges, that it got national attention and backfired. A new poll out today shows that a majority of Tennessee residents think the expulsions were wrong. And Tennessee is a very Republican state. It doesn't have a single statewide elected Democrat. But because this scheme in Tennessee was so brazen, and because voters who care about democracy mobilized so quickly, it was able to become a national story practically overnight, even amid a very busy news cycle. And because that mobilization was so quick, Representative Justin Jones didn't even miss a day of work. He was expelled and reinstated over the course of one weekend. And while what happened in Tennessee is particularly notable, it's far from the only example of conservative legislatures working quietly to roll democracy back. Just ask Justin Jones.
This is a historic day for Tennessee, but it may mark a very dark day for Tennessee because it will signal to the nation that there is no democracy in this state. It will signal to the nation that if it can happen here in Tennessee, it's coming to your state next. And that is why the nation is watching us, what we do here.
There's no other way to put it. Authoritarianism is ascendant in the Republican Party, and state legislatures are leading that charge. In Montana, state Republicans are trying to change how the elections are run, but only for the 2024 Senate race. They're trying to switch that race in particular to a top two primary system, which would effectively block any third-party candidates from the ballot. It's all part of a scheme to defeat the popular incumbent Democratic Senator Jon Tester. Republicans think he benefits from the current system, which allows third-party candidates to siphon votes from their nominees. And Montana's taken quite a few steps recently to roll back Democratic norms. In 2021, the Republican state legislature tried to end statewide elections of Supreme Court justices and instead have those justices elected by district which of course means the legislature could gerrymander the map in support of conservatives. The same year, they also successfully changed the state's voter ID law to ban the use of student IDs from Montana colleges, making it that much more difficult for young people to participate in local democracy. According to one Republican legislator, her party changed the rules because, quote, college students tend to be liberal, end quote. I love when they say the quiet parts out loud. In Wisconsin, Republicans are already threatening to impeach a liberal state Supreme Court justice who won last week by 11 points because they are worried that she will help overturn the state's abortion ban, as well as their draconian worst-in-the-nation gerrymander. Those partisan voting maps are, of course, in and of themselves inherently anti-democratic, while Wisconsin is essentially evenly split 50-50 between the two parties in terms of voters. Republicans have been able to rig themselves a near-permanent supermajority in the state legislature. In North Carolina, Republicans managed to convince a Democrat in a blue district to switch parties so they can achieve a supermajority and override the two-term Democratic governor's veto power. And these are just a handful of examples. There are so many more. Maybe you know about some of these. Maybe you didn't. If you did, it may be because you live in one of those states that I've just talked about, or you heard or read about it in the national media. But some of these stories go underreported because local news has been on the decline for years, slowly bled to death by a lack of funding, or raided for parts by venture capitalists. A lot of this stuff just flies under the radar. We all know when Marjorie Taylor Greene or Matt Gaetz say something ridiculous and offensive because Capitol Hill is full of reporters. But what about when a Florida House Republican compares trans folks to mutants and demons like a representative named Webster Barnaby did just yesterday?
To all the folks that are in the audience that consider themselves gender dysphoria, cis, I don't know what all that means. I really don't know what all that means. I'm looking at society today, and it's like I'm watching an X-Men movie. It's like we have mutants living among us on planet Earth. The Lord rebuke you, Satan, and all of your demons and all of your imps who come and parade before us. That's right, I called you demons and imps.
That's some crazy stuff right there, but that kind of rhetoric is all over the place within these state Republican parties. Nearly every troubling trend in the creeping threat of right-wing authoritarianism in this country is spearheaded in Republican-led state houses. They get the least amount of attention, both from the media and from the voters. But the fight to save democracy will have to start at the state and local level. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is a Democrat of Texas who previously served as a state lawmaker in the Texas House. Ben Wickler is the chair of the Wisconsin Democratic Party. He played a major role in securing a victory for Democrats in that state's Supreme Court election last week. Both join me now. Thanks for being here. Congresswoman Crockett, good to see you. You're OG on this topic. You and your fellow Texas state representatives, when you were in the state House, had this kind of thing going on. You had to stage protests and activities within the confines of the legislature and the legislative system in order to stop what ended up being a first-in-the-nation abortion ban.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And Ali, the only reason that you and I came to even know each other is because of that protest. You're right. I'm listening to you speak in your monologue, and I'm snapping and I'm saying, amen, brother, amen. Keep preaching, right? Because that's exactly what it's been. We could not get the coverage. Not that we were necessarily looking for coverage, but we want to make sure that our constituents are informed. Most people didn't even have an idea of who their state representatives were. They could tell you who their senators were, who their Congress people were, but they couldn't tell you about the state reps, and they had no idea that when they were complaining about criminal justice issues, they really needed to be talking to us. They had no idea that an abortion ban was going to be coming down. They had no idea that, what started off as a bathroom bill would then continue on and turn into anti-trans legislation. And they had no idea that the Republicans would be so desperate to bring about voter suppression in the state of Texas that we would flee the state and end up having warrants out for our arrest and really bring national attention to the issue.
And I guess that's the point of the exercise. I was talking to Reverend Al the other day, and he was saying, people always say you're just doing it for the attention. And he says, yeah, that's kind of the point. We need to actually get attention on these issues, because when voters, Ben, start to learn about what's going on in your state, in Wisconsin, what you found is they actually did respond.
absolutely. They're furious when they find out, but Republicans don't want them to find out. One of the stunning things about politics today is that when you just accurately describe what Republicans are trying to do in state houses in Wisconsin, across the country, voters initially think that it must be a lie because they can't imagine that anyone would try to get away with a power grab so brazen and extreme. In Wisconsin, we had the Supreme Court race. There were millions of dollars of ads. Eventually, it sank in for folks that Republicans were trying to, on the one hand, rip away their reproductive freedom, and on the other hand, smash democracy so badly that voters would have no ability to fight back against it. Their only path for voters to take back control over their own bodies, over their democracy, was to win the Supreme Court race, and that's exactly what they did by a landslide. But frankly, if it hadn't been for this opportunity, we would have been stuck in a doom loop that could have lasted for decades.
It is Wednesday, the 12th of April of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? No one. Actually, I did make a link for today's special to a number of recipes and variations on the original Delmonica recipe of Eggs Benedict. So do check it out so you have an idea of where I'm coming from. and that's that. Anyway, I wanted to make note of I believe he's a Florida state representative of some ilk, who, for some reason, this guy cited the X-Men franchise as a way of justifying his LGBTQ plus bigotry, because he doesn't know what sis, what is that? I don't know. What is it? Citing the X-Men franchise. And who does the guy identify with in the movie that he finds solace and comfort in and roots for is the tyrannical government hunting down the mutants for annihilation. What's up with that guy? And then invoking, in his capacity as an elected official, an elected representative, invoking some weird whack-ass superstition steeped in, I don't know, it's not even Wicker Man Christianity. It is out there. Imps? Out, imp! Some sort of weird backwoods exorcism, if you ask me. Woo-wee! Yeah. They are evil. We must annihilate them. Imps! Out, imp! F you. and then also you have, they have to be Russian bots and trolls. I mean, we're seeing a lot more of them, and we know why, Alan. We know why. Mr. Musk. Ugh, stinks around here, doesn't it? Musky. That they want us, meaning, I don't know, rational human beings who like the idea of constitutional rule and order, to cite in the Constitution where it says there should be a separation of church and state. And I'm thinking, well, you know, here, I just happen to have Thomas Jefferson standing in line with me to see this movie. Was it Jules and Jim or The Red Balloon? I can't remember where they brought out Marshall McLuhan. When everybody could say they liked Woody Allen because you didn't really know about his proclivities. I got your Danbury letter right here, baby. Okay. So, I like how they want to get rid of libraries. Let's defund libraries. The more people know, the more they'll know about what we're doing. And that's exactly what was up. Because in a representative democracy, a founding father like Benjamin Franklin, who pretty much established the American library system, I know Dewey had a lot to do with his decimals also, but the two in tandem work pretty well to bring about the greatest institution that a democracy, representative democracy, constitutional representative democracy, so that the, I'll spit it out, I promise, so that the population, the electorate, are informed, are educated enough to be able to govern themselves. Otherwise, what do you have? A bunch of superstitious asshats saying that a group of people can't have due process and equal protection because they are imps. I'll spit it out. Imps. I like that. There is no room for that. And I'll tell you where it says that there is a separation of church and state, and that is in the clause that specifies there shall be no religious test to hold office. I'm paraphrasing, but it's there. Look it up. They want us to do all the work, okay? And I'm like, you do the work. Go in there. I mean, there it is. Yep, anti-democratic movements are thriving in GOP state houses. Damn right. Is there any coincidence in the fact that state houses were overrun in the summer before January 6th? The summers and fall, yeah, storming them. Here in Oregon, there's some lawmakers are still being held to account for their involvement in just one, because there was a couple. They were going to get rid of a few of those other guys. Yeah, right-wing, bigoted extremists. Here, I'll unlock the door for you. Take over our state house. Everybody thought it was fun and games, like playing tag. We were just playing tag, and then we set up our cornhole lobbing contraption. What is this cornhole thing? Dual horseshoes. What do you think this is? God, if you're going to be true to America, at least, I don't know, honor some institutions of America like horseshoe tossing. What's this? Cornhole bag BS. Give me a break. Speaking of corn, yeah, that's how my mind works. It looks like Indiana has another problem with toxic chemicals being spewed into the atmosphere. Wow. So I just mentioned that Huskers do toxics, don't they? Put that to music. Kind of like a little German beat. Yeah. Dieter this. I don't know. It's been one of those days, one of those weeks. Oh my God. Yeah. Is this Kazmarek going to get his way? Where will it stop? We already know they don't like measles vaccines. That predated all this BS about, we can't have the COVID vaccine because it's some sort of commie plot. Oh, really? Sounds like a commie plot to convince you guys to not get vaccinated so that it decimates America so we're more easily taken over. And you put all the evidence out in front of them, and they just laugh it off. It's like playing tag. Okay. Well, if we're it, then I think that maybe we should do something with it. and I do like what Alvin Bragg is attempting to do in suing Jim Jordan, who was not able to pass the bar or practice law, going against a seasoned prosecutor. Give me a break. All right. Hey, if they're going to punch, you can't just stand there and take it. You know, give them a couple of jabs. Wait for the left hook. That's what I always like to do. And a right cross, maybe, for good measure. All right. Well, I guess what we should do is stop this just rambling on and give you an indication of where we are headed for the rest of this salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. What we have in store for you today on the rest of the menu, well, the Fox attorneys in the Dominion libel case got the mild-mannered judge really mad at them. Yeah, they apparently gave some conflicting testimony about Murdoch's role in the company. Free COVID testing will end in May because everybody knows it's over. Yeah, it's going to be over for us because I think we should still take a few precautions no matter what the cost. And an environmental group sued to uphold closing California's last nuke plant. Yeah, Diablo Canyon. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Iran President Ebrahim Raisi announced a cabinet reshuffle. And Germany expelled Chad's ambassador after their own envoy was kicked out. That's how it works. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link. The chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, who will be attending Netroots Nation in Chicago, where the Democratic National Convention will be held as well. Not at the same time, but hey, how about that? Chicago for two big events. Yes, so thank you, Kelly, and thank you for representing us at Netroots Nation. If you out there in radio listening land would look across, how do you do that? Well, you're at our homepage at netrootsradio.com. If you look across to the left from that chat room link and down just a skosh, you will then notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really helps us. And I'll tell you how it helps us. Your willingness to become a recurring Patreon would be, how about if you could send us what you might be able to afford to spend on an espresso type coffee drink, for instance. If you could send those funds to us once a month, we are able to pool other coffees that have been purchased for us and puts a pretty darn good dent in those monthly bills. And they're not just monthly either. There's yearly and quarterly, plus all the other sundry issues that one must attend to keep this powerhouse of resistance resisting as the founders originally intended so many years ago. Over a dozen now. Wow. Okay, so thank you for your generosity, and thank you to those of you who may consider to be so generous in the future. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable, you can do so by going to @Netroots Radio. It's very simple. Tom takes care of that, and thank you, Tom. You can also follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable @Justice Putnam, of course. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's. That gets posted 10 minutes before showtime, and as luck would have it, sometimes I don't get those show notes and links out on social media until the podcast diary gets posted. But regardless, go to those sites that I mentioned and find me, and you can get to at least the general page for those show notes and links, and find even the current one and past as well, plus some other tidbits of information and, I don't know, internet entertainment. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, wherever podcasts can be found. Deezer's still doing podcasts. Thank you, Deezer. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Randall Chase from the Associated Press. Attorneys defending Fox in a defamation case related to false claims about the 2020 election withheld critical information about the role company founder Rupert Murdoch played at Fox News, a revelation that angered the judge when it came up at the hearing yesterday, Tuesday. It was not clear whether the development would affect a trial scheduled to begin tomorrow, Thursday, with jury selection. Dominion Voting Systems is suing Fox for just a measly $1.6 billion, saying it damaged its reputation by repeatedly airing false claims that the company helped orchestrate a fraud that cost Donald Trump his re-election. The role of Fox executives is at the heart of the case. The company's attorneys have sought to insulate members of the Murdoch family and to keep them from testifying live before a jury, arguing that their roles at the parent company, Fox Corp., put them at a distance from the Fox News shows that aired the bogus claims. But we all seen Succession, and we know how they work. The role of Fox Corp had asserted since Dominion filed its lawsuit in 2021 that Rupert had no official role at Fox News. In its filings, it had listed Fox News officers as Suzanne Scott, Jay Wallace, and Joe Dorrego, but on Easter Sunday, he has risen. Fox disclosed to Dominion's attorneys that Murdoch also is executive chair at Fox News. The disclosure came after Superior Court Judge Eric Davis wondered aloud during a status conference last week who Fox News officers were. Davis was clearly disturbed by the disclosure coming on the eve of the trial. My problem is that it has been represented to me more than once that he is not an officer, the judge said. Davis suggested that he had known of Murdoch's dual role at Fox Corp and Fox News. He might have reached different conclusions in a summary judgment ruling he issued last month. In that ruling, the judge said there was no dispute that the statements aired by Fox were false, but that a jury would have to decide whether Fox News acted with actual malice and whether Fox Corp directly participated in airing the statements. He told Fox attorney Matthew Carter, "You have a credibility problem." In response, Carter said he believed Murdoch's title at Fox News was only honorific. "I'm not mad at you," the judge told Carter. "I'm mad at the situation I'm in." In a statement issued after yesterday, Tuesday's pretrial hearing, Fox said Rupert Murdoch has been listed as executive chairman of Fox News in our SEC filing since 2019, and this filing was referenced by Dominion's own attorneys during his deposition. It is unclear whether the judge will take any action in response to the late disclosure, but an attorney for Dominion said he wanted Fox to further explain Murdoch's role with the network, indicating the issue could come up when the pretrial hearing continues today. Dominion attorney Justin Nelson told the judge that the disclosure has a big impact on the case. He said Fox's failure to disclose Murdoch's status at Fox News has deprived Dominion of a whole bunch of information from Murdoch as a custodian of Fox News records that it was entitled to have. It has something that really has impacted how we have litigated this case, he said. Tuesday's development was just the latest turn in an uncomfortable spotlight on the network. Information obtained by Dominion as part of his lawsuit has shown that some network hosts harbored off-camera doubts about election fraud claims, but nevertheless allowed program guests to repeatedly make them in the aftermath of the 2020 election. And it looks like they're continuing on that same path because they're nothing but a bunch of toadies for ratings. Oh, with the side benefit of turning the United States of America into a fascist state. In this reporter's opinion. Matthew Perrone of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. When the COVID-19 public health emergency ends in the United States next month, you'll still have access to a multitude of tests, but with one big difference. Who pays for them? For the first time, you may have to pick up some or all of the costs depending on insurance coverage and whether the tests are done at home or in a doctor's office. But there's still time to get some free tests before the May 11th change, and there could still be free ones available afterward. But some state and local governments may continue to distribute free home tests through clinics, libraries, and community centers, and the federal government for now is still sending free tests through the U.S. Postal Service to households that haven't already received 2 shipments. And don't discount those old tests that you haven't used. The expiration date on the package may have been extended. The FDA's website provides a list to check and see which tests are still good. Now here's a look at what the end of the government's emergency declaration on May 11th means for testing. Now, the biggest changes will be for those over-the-counter tests, which account for the vast majority of screening in the U.S. today. Since early 2021, the federal government has required all private insurers to cover up to 8 COVID-19 tests per month. That requirement will soon go away. Coverage is also scheduled to lapse for tens of millions of seniors in the federal government's Medicare program, though some members of Congress are pushing to extend the benefit. While some private insurers may continue to cover all or some home tests, there will no longer be a nationwide rule. A 2-pack of tests typically costs between $20 and $24. Okay. In-office tests can also see Americans expecting to pay more for those. At a hospital, clinic, or doctor's office, insurers have been barred from charging copays or any other cost-sharing fees related to the testing. That requirement also ends next month. While insurers will still cover basic testing costs, some people could face new fees for a portion of the test price or for the services of the health professional performing it. Lab tests have typically ranged between $70 and $100, and some of that could also be passed along to patients. The U.S. struggled to build up its test manufacturing capacity during the first 2 years of the pandemic, with demand waning after each surge. Experts worry that the country could again be caught flat-footed after the federal government stops purchasing tests in bulk. Only after the U.S. government said it would buy 1 billion tests did production stabilize, reaching a peak of 900 million monthly tests in February of 2022. As of September, manufacturers were still producing over 400 million tests per month, far exceeding U.S. testing levels, according to Duke University researchers. Brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. An environmental group yesterday, Tuesday, sued to block Pacific Gas and Electric from seeking to extend the federal operating licenses for California's last nuclear power plant. A complaint filed in San Francisco Superior Court by Friends of the Earth asks the court to prohibit the utility from sidestepping its 2016 agreement with environmentalists and plant workers to close the Twin Dome Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant by 2025. The possibility of a longer operating run emerged last year after Governor Gavin Newsom and the legislature opened a way for PG&E to seek an extended lifespan for the twin reactors. The company intends to apply to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission by the end of the year to extend operations by as much as 2 decades. That's 20 years, you know. The operating license for the Unit 1 reactor expires next year, and Unit 2 license expires in 2025. Hallie Templeton, legal director for Friends of the Earth, said in a statement that PG&E has been acting as if our contract has disappeared. California is the birthplace of the modern environmental movement that for decades has had a fraught relationship with nuclear power, which does not produce carbon pollution like fossil fuels, but leaves behind waste that can remain dangerously radioactive for centuries, even eons. The Newsom administration is pushing to expand solar power and other clean energy as the state aims to cut emissions by 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. Newsom's decision last year to support a longer operating run for Diablo Canyon shocked environmentalists and anti-nuclear advocates because he had once been a leading voice for closing the plant. PG&E said in a statement that it had not yet seen the lawsuit, but that as a regulated utility will follow state policy. The lawsuit marks the latest development in a long-running fight over operation and safety of the decades-old plant, which Newsom says should keep running beyond 2025 to ward off possible blackouts as California transitions to solar and other renewable energy sources. Diablo Canyon produces 9% of the state's electricity. I should add that there's been a fraught relationship between Newsom and PG&E even from before his time as mayor of San Francisco. And when I say fraught, I mean that he was kind of in bed with PG&E. So let us now go to our break. And when we come back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, a minute 25 for the film and 13 seconds for male geeks. Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves shows how easily D&D's story beats can translate to an action-adventure fantasy melodrama. It's pretty much because they're the same thing. Your Thief campaign can basically be a heist film, which is the spine of this movie. Writer-directors Jonathan Goldstein, John Francis Daley, and writer Michael Gilio turn out a solid script that uses a couple of plot formulas well, but mostly wins with character. And it turns out that the current D&D rules about giving your RPG characters aspirational ideals, societal, organizational, and personal bonds, and moral or interpersonal flaws make very entertaining movie characters, like when you lie easily and your ride or die buddy is always brutally honest. One smart thing our writing trio does, no prominent dwarves or high elves, because you can't beat the Lord of the Rings, and why try? Especially when D&D has so many other races you can play with, and because Hasbro probably wants this movie to be a D&D showcase. Of course, our movie-making bros slavishly apply three of Hollywood's favorite action tropes: the family in jeopardy, the damsel in distress, and the redemptive dad. The movie is also resiliently male-centric. All of the female characters are either to be protected by or acquired by men, or are stalwarts in helping men achieve their goals. For the male characters, their goals drive the plot, and two of them have the only developmental arcs in the film. You know, this is the second recent Chris Pine flick I've seen like this. Coincidence? He is an executive producer here. If you're not a male geek, stop listening now. This is the D&D movie you've been waiting for. It's not a perfect port, and that's a plus, because now you can sit back and smugly say, that's not the way it would really happen, just for you. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Arthritis is common among veterans. Traumatic and overuse injuries during active duty are risk factors for developing arthritis. Fortunately, there are low-cost or no-cost strategies that can help veterans manage arthritis. Physical activity can reduce pain and improve function. It can also help improve mood and play a role in managing other chronic conditions, such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. You can do low-impact activities, such as walking, biking, swimming, and water aerobics, all good forms of exercise. Arthritis-specific classes can help you get started. Information on classes, exercise programs, and tools are available at cdc.gov/arthritis. These resources can help reduce pain and improve function. Learning self-management techniques can help all veterans become more active, improve their overall quality of life, and thrive.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO. This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. From a very young age, we're encouraged to eat fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, many Americans are not getting the message. Dr. Seung-Hee Lee Kwan is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. She's joining us today to discuss the importance of eating enough fruits and vegetables. Welcome to the show, Seung-Hee.
Thank you for having me.
Seung-Hee, what is the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
The federal guidelines recommend that adults consume at least 1.5 cups to 2 cups of fruit and 2 to 3 cups of vegetables each day. This is for adults who get less than 30 minutes of physical activity a day. Adults who are more physically active need more calories and thus should be eating more fruits and vegetables. 1 cup is about 12 strawberries or 1 large tomato.
How many people consume the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
We found that very few adults are getting enough fruits and vegetables. Just 12% are eating the recommended amount of fruits, and less than 1 in 10 eat enough vegetables. And consumption is lower among men, young adults, and adults living in poverty.
Why is eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables so important?
Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help with three things. One, it can reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and deaths, such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, and even obesity. It can also add important nutrients that are commonly missing in Americans' diet. And it can help with weight management if adults consume fruits and vegetables instead of other calorie-dense foods.
How can we meet the recommended daily intake of fruits and vegetables?
Try to fill half of your plate with fruits or vegetables at each meal or every eating occasion. Making fruits and vegetables the focal point of your meal will help you meet your recommendations. For example, recent studies have shown that adults get most of their fruit during breakfast and snacks. So you can try adding berries to your morning oatmeal or grab a piece of fresh fruit as an afternoon snack. For vegetables, most adults eat them at dinner, so try adding more into your lunch by adding a side salad or packing a snack of baby carrots or grape tomatoes.
Are canned or frozen products just as good as fresh?
All forms of fruits and vegetables count towards meeting the recommendations. For the most health benefits, make sure that the fruits and vegetables you consume have limited amount of salt, butter, sugar, or creamy sauces. When selecting canned fruits, choose the ones with lowest sugars. And for canned or frozen vegetables, choose those lower in sodium.
Where can listeners get more information about eating a healthy diet?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/nutrition or choosemyplate.gov.
Thanks, Seung-hee. I've been talking today with Seung-hee Lee Kwon about the importance of eating a healthy diet. Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and death and add important nutrients to your diet. Make sure you're eating enough. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
We're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Book banning is at an all-time high.
Listen up. This matters. I'm Louis Black, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
The highest since the ALA, that's the American Library Association, began tracking this data 20 years ago. Twice as many bans in 2022 as in 2021, a year that itself had set an all-time high. Years ago, a local parent or community member might demand that a book be taken off the shelf. Now, there are demands for multiple removals, sometimes hundreds of books at a time, demands often made by organized groups, many national, that have a political or a social agenda. A few books have been challenged because they have racist language, but the vast majority of the books being targeted have LGBTQ themes. These groups don't want people to read these books. The director of the Library Association's Office for Intellectual Freedom is quoted in the recent AP story as saying that the last 2 years, quote, have been exhausting, frightening, and outrage-inducing. And the story is getting worse. Bills that do or may facilitate the restriction of books in public libraries and or schools have passed and or are pending in many states, including Iowa, Texas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Florida, among others. Apparently, the 21st century crusade of book banning has only just begun. That's a fearful prospect, which speaks volumes.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union because freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day that workers at the Toledo Auto Light Factory decided to go on strike. The company made electric starters for the auto giants in nearby Detroit. The punishing effects of the Great Depression had hit the auto industry hard. Unemployment in the industrial city of Toledo soared. At the auto light plant, workers faced increased scrutiny from their bosses, who knew hundreds of eager-to-work laborers stood at the ready just outside the plant's gate, ready to take the job of anyone who dared to complain. Philip Croth and Margaret Beagle recalled the working conditions in an oral history of the strike, saying, "Under observation, even into the toilets, workers found themselves sneaking a bite to eat or a puff of a cigarette, aware that they would be fired if discovered." One of the most hated practices by management was known as the bench. Workers were told to sit on a bench where they would wait until they were needed to perform a job. Once that job ended, they went back to the bench, being paid for only the time spent while working. Faced with such conditions, the workers had had enough and went out on strike. The company won an injunction that allowed only 25 workers to picket at any one location. But then something happened that the company had not expected. The Lucas County Unemployment League stood up with the picketers. Instead of taking the jobs of those on strike, the unemployed members of the league rallied to the picket lines in defiance of the injunction. In late May, picketers and the National Guard clashed in what became known as the Battle of Toledo. Finally, on June 2nd, the strike was settled. The workers had won a 5% raise and union recognition. Today's Labor History in 2 brought to you in memory of Carol Hillman, a passionate friend of workers and volunteer of the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 37 degrees Fahrenheit, and we had a little bit of snow falling last night, though it didn't really stick. And it did change to rain earlier this morning, which we are having currently, just some light rain, but we will have showers developing in the afternoon with highs in the upper 40s, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and mainly clear overnight with lows in the low 30s, winds out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, then partly cloudy tomorrow with highs near 60. Winds out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and it looks like we may have some rain and snow coming in over the weekend. We'll see how that changes as we get closer to the weekend. Pollen, surprisingly, is still rated as none here in the town of Rogue River, though we have all sorts of pollen-type plants pollinating as we speak. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 36 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is in the moderate range at level 4. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.14 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 86%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 46 degrees and cloudy with a wind advisory. Paris is 53 degrees with rain showers and a wind advisory. Rome is 67 degrees and sunny with a wind advisory. Kyiv is 50 degrees with light rain. Kabul is 61 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 76 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 58 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 61 and just merely cloudy. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and sunny with a small craft advisory on the bay and offshore. And New York, New York is 74 degrees Fahrenheit, sunny with a small craft advisory as well. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Staff at the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Iran President Ebrahim Raisi on Tuesday yesterday announced a cabinet reshuffle, replacing the Minister of Agriculture and the head of Planning and Budget. The moves come amid widespread dissatisfaction with the government. State TV said Raisi replaced Agriculture Minister Javad Zatadinejad with a deputy who will serve as interim minister. He replaced the vice president and head of the Planning and Budget Department, Masoud Mirakazemi, with Davoud Manzour, a former department deputy. The country's dire economic conditions, including inflation of nearly 50%, that's 50, have contributed to widespread anger at the government. Retirees and teachers have held scattered protests in recent months. Iran's currency, the rial, is at a low of 510,000 to the dollar as the effects of nationwide anti-government protests and the breakdown of the 2015 nuclear deal shake the economy. The rial was trading at 32,000 to the dollar when the country signed the accord with world powers. The agreement lifted international sanctions in return for strict limits on and surveillance of its nuclear activities. The most recent cabinet reshuffling was the fifth in less than 2 years since Raisi came to power. Earlier this month, he dismissed the education minister after a delay in payments to teachers. And in December, Raisi replaced the Minister of Roads after he became terminally ill. Last year, Raisi replaced the Labor Minister after protests by workers and retirees over payments.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
And even more Associated Press staff brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Germany yesterday, Tuesday, ordered Chad's ambassador to leave the country, responding to the Central African nation's expulsion last week of the German ambassador. Chad's government on Friday gave German Ambassador Gordon Crick 48 hours to leave, citing his discourteous attitude and accusing him of failing to respect diplomatic customs. A brief statement from the Chadian government gave no further details about the reason for his removal. Crick arrived in Germany on Sunday after having been seen off at the airport in the Chadian capital by several colleagues from allied countries. German news agency DPA reported. Germany retaliated yesterday against what it called the unfounded expulsion of our ambassador. Chad's ambassador in Berlin, Mariam Ali Musa, was summoned to the foreign ministry and given 48 hours to leave Germany. We regret that it had come to this, the ministry said in a tweet. Ambassador Crick carried out his job in an exemplary manner and advocated for human rights and the quick transition to a civilian government in Chad. It said that Germany's embassy in Chad would continue to work together with our partners on the ground. Germany still has lower-ranking diplomats in the embassy. Media reports have pointed to criticism of Chad's transitional government as a likely motivation for the German ambassador's expulsion. Hours after the death of Chad's longtime president Idris Deby Itno in 2021, the military named his son Mohammed Idris Deby as the country's interim leader for what was intended to be an 18-month period. However, last year, the government announced it was extending the transition for 2 more years, which led to protests across the country. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.